So good morning, everybody. Today we're continuing with Poor Charlie's Almanac, a fantastic book that I recommend reading, and we're going through the Psychology of Human Misjudgement. And so it's basically the different ways that our mind usually makes mistakes in our decision making. Because we are evolutionary, we are trained to simplify decision making, and decisions that have evolutionary been the best decision to make or maybe not the best ones for us today. So if we can learn to recognize these and see when they are affecting us, we can make much smarter decisions. And if we make smarter decisions, we can have a better quality of life and stop just moving around in circles and actually developing and becoming more better human beings, having a better quality of life. So today we're going through number 4 and 5. So number 4 is doubt avoidance tendency, and number 5 is inconsistency avoidance tendency. So let's start with doubt avoidance tendency. And Charlie Munger, who wrote the book or who made the talks, he had a very he has quite advanced English, so I will try to help to simplify the texts so that we all can understand them, so that they're more easy to understand. So doubt avoidance tendency, you can simplify that maybe by saying that we're making decisions in order to avoid doubt. Because when we are in a big decision, for example, in a big life decision, it doesn't really feel good. I've been there many times, and you feel kind of anxious, and you feel worried that you're gonna make the wrong decision, and it feels stressful. You don't feel certain. And then Charlie Munger, he says that we have a tendency to take a decision fast in order to avoid this feeling of being uncomfortable, in order to reduce those feelings. And so we jump into a decision and we stick with that just to avoid these negative emotions. So let's make an example. If a person loses their job, and so then if a person does that, naturally they will feel maybe feelings of, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not good enough for this position, nobody wants me. All of these thoughts and emotions will pop up. Then they might be tempted to take the first opportunity that pops up, even though if it's a much more simple job that would have much lower pay, and then maybe they stick with that for a very long time instead of just waiting a little bit longer. Even if they have the money to do so, they could wait just a little bit longer and find maybe even better opportunity than they had before. So you see how this principle works, that in order to remove this feeling of being uncomfortable, we jump into a decision in order just to remove it, to feel better. It can also be like now when Sweden is in a recession, that many businesses have gone bankrupt. So then maybe people are tempted to just jump into taking a job or going into studying or jumping into a decision just because that was such a painful experience of having a bankruptcy or having a painful experience of that the market is not, people are not buying as much as they used to, people are postponing their purchases, so on. The profit is going down, maybe you're just breaking even, or your company maybe have gone bankrupt. And just to remove that pain of really learning from that experience and seeing, okay, what really would be good to do next. Maybe then you jump into something that feels certain, a job that you had in the past, for example, or something that you feel comfortable about, rather than staying in that uncertain position, seeing, okay, what would actually be the best way here. Maybe there's some pieces of the collapsed business that I could use. Maybe there's some great lesson here that I could learn and put into a new business, or maybe there's parts of the business, maybe there's some social media channel you could use for something else, or maybe there's customers that you could serve in a new way, or relationships that you already have, but instead of doing that would be smart, you jump into, okay, let's take this job I used to have in my 20s or something that feels more secure, or let's go into studying because that feels then I have a certain path, I know what to do for the next few years. So you see how this tendency might make us to make faster decisions that feel secure, just in order to remove this uncomfortable feeling. So why do we have this tendency? Well, when we were hunter-gatherers, if a lion jumped out of the bushes to attack us, it wasn't so smart to stand there and think, should I run left or should I run right? We just would make a fast decision, and that would save us in that situation. So naturally we have that programmed in, that making fast decisions in a harmful situation or in a pressured situation, that will be the best option. That will save our life. But in today's world, when the decisions are more, they're not so acute in the moment. They may be more long-term decisions that affect the course of your life, the path of education, path of your which job to take, which partner to be with, for example. So then it becomes smarter to actually stop and think about it and make sure you're making the right decision. So number 5, inconsistency avoidance tendency. And also this sounds way more complicated than it is. It's basically that we tend to stick with things. We have a habit to commit to things and sticking with them and not changing course, because that would actually take more energy to change course than to stay on the one that we're at. And I think evolutionary, we are energy saving human beings. Natural selection rewarded us for saving calories, storing fat in the body, or because energy was something scarce, and if we had something, a safe path, that we knew, like around these few trees we had food, we had water, we had there were animals to hunt, there were fruits to eat, then to go out in the desert, to try to find something else, that was a much higher risk of dying there than actually staying in that safe place. So if we have something that we know works already, then it wouldn't make sense to try to shift that, to leave that, to find something else that would be much riskier. So natural selection and evolution have rewarded us to stick on the path we're at the moment. So, and what does that mean for us today? That means that we stick with our habits. If we have one habit, a way of being and doing things, it is very likely that we will stick doing that thing for the rest of our life, or for a very, very long time. Also, for example, if a group of hunter-gatherers would go out to hunt down a mammoth, for example, and they were 4 or 5 people doing this, it wouldn't make sense if they knew the process of doing it, and hunting down a mammoth must have involved some kind of risk, that maybe you would injure yourself, maybe severely, or even die if the mammoth would attack back. So if you had one strategy that worked, why would you change that? It wouldn't make sense to try a new different type of spear each day, or to change roles every day. If you had one role and one weapon that you knew worked, or one strategy in the group, it would make sense to actually continue using that, and it wouldn't make sense to try to do new things. Unfortunately, today that means that also bad habits will stick. And Charlie Munger, he writes, it's very, very rare to find a person who can list a few bad habits that they have broken in their life, that they have been able to erase or changed. Because if people have a bad habit, they stick with them for the rest of their life. And if we combine number 4 and 5, that if we are in a tricky situation, for example, and we in a pressure situation, and we want to make a decision fast to avoid feeling uncomfortable, then we're also very likely to stick with that for a very long time. So if we take the wrong decision, we jump into the wrong career, for example, we tend to stick with that for a long time. And you see many people, for example, they stay in the same job maybe for 30, 40 years, when they regret that. Maybe they would have wanted starting their own business or changing to something that they really wanted, but they stick with the path that they are on. Charlie also goes on to describe how our identity plays a role in this, because if we have one identity, we're very likely to be consistent with that identity in our actions. For example, the doctor will dress as a doctor, talk as a doctor, do other things that doctors do. So if we have one identity, for example, we are associated with a profession, or we are studying one subject, we are in school to learn economics, for example, or we're studying to be a musician. Start to form that identity, and our actions will be aligned with that identity. We will start to dress like that profession. We will start to dress like our peers in that profession. We will start to talk like they do. We will start to be consistent with that identity. And Charlie, he says that the bigger the sacrifice has been to assume or to form that new identity or become that person, the more difficult it is to break it. So the more committed we will be to stay on that path. And that can be used for better or for worse. And for example, he makes the example of in religious cults, for example, that they then have big sacrifices or ceremonies for people to assume to become a part of the group, to make some kind of big sacrifice in order to be there. And then they know that the members of the cult will be much more dedicated and stick in that group. And he made the example that members of the Nazi army, they would make a big thing out of this, like a ceremony when someone joined the army, and then they knew that they were so committed to the cause, even though that they maybe felt that it was wrong. They felt that just because they had made this big commitment and sacrifice in order to be here, they could not change it. So he explains it that was that is a huge thing in that can harm us in becoming part of these groups, for example. So we really need to learn this, to be attentive to see these things, and then we can stay away from bad situations where people try to manipulate us to reach these to take decisions and commitments that are not in our best interest but in other people's best interest, basically. There's one quote in the text from the talk that I really like. Charlie Munger, he writes, where he says, "Proper education is one long exercise in the augmentation of high cognition so that our wisdom becomes strong enough to destroy wrong thinking maintained by resistance to change." I think that is a fabulous quote. There's so much wisdom in that. And Charlie, he says that one way we can use this principle for our own benefit is to teach things that we want to learn and that we want to develop in ourselves. So, for example, this is what I'm doing now with these videos, that I'm trying to teach the principles and the best parts of Charlie Munger, the Psychology of Human Misjudgement, in order to understand it and use it myself. And I feel it's amazing just when I've done that, what great insights have come out of that. And you can also see investor Monish Pabrai. He says the same thing, that when he teaches on his YouTube channel, for example, when he teaches different universities, like economy classes in universities, he says it's purely from a perspective that he wants to learn. In each talk that he's making, he has made some research, for example, about economic bubbles or the concept of circling the wagons, like saving, protecting his really most important investments, and he's making a short presentation about that before going into question and answer. And I think that is really because he makes research himself, studies one area really, really deeply, and then he goes out and make a presentation about that, and then he kind of deepens his own understanding about that subject, and he learns that. So, and he's, if you haven't seen the other videos, he was a friend of Charlie Munger, and they spent a lot of time together, and he has tried to clone a lot of Charlie Munger's behavior. So I think he has learned that from him. And why does this work? Why does it work to teach to understand something ourselves? Well, because if we teach something, then we would feel like a fraud if we wouldn't live up to that ourselves, if we wouldn't try to embody it. So we kind of tricking ourselves into start using these principles. And also when we teach it, and when we teach it repeatedly, we also start to pound in these new thoughts. We are actually forming new pathways in our brain, and we are expressing this these new words. I mean, you can see it in religion. People sing religious songs, and they use that to make people more believing in that religion. Or prayer, that they read these religious texts together to pound in the message. And definitely when I've been teaching music and trying to distill the most important principles of the human voice, that has helped me so much to get a clearer understanding of one subject. So teaching something really, really helps to pound in and both pound in the message and get a clear understanding of one subject, and also make it part of one's identity. What is another thing we can learn from this? Well, we can use the principle of the identity, that we will act according to our identity. This would put an emphasis on dressing well, grooming, and looking our best. Because if we dress well, we will act in alignment with that. We will take better care of our business. We will take better care of our relationships, for example. But I think if we also start to be sloppy in how we dress, how we present ourselves, and then that will spill over into how we take care of our finances, our business, our relationships, and everything else. So one interesting reflection that I've seen there is, for example, if I go out in the city and I take a bike ride, and if I have a shirt on, for example, I see more cars will stop for me to let me pass. People will treat me nicer. They will treat me as an important person. But if I have a t-shirt or my workout clothes, for example, fewer cars will stop. And I think that is because people are used to treating maybe their boss, that they need to treat their boss well, or their bank manager, their contact at the bank, for example, they need to treat them well. So they kind of have this program that, okay, if a person looks like an important person, then I need to treat them like an important person. I need to treat them well. So and for me that really makes sense, that okay, then if I dress like that, if I take care of myself, then people will actually treat me better. I will have a better experience going out among other people. So I hope you enjoyed the video and that you got some insights from it. I highly recommend you getting the book, studying it, and reading it, because as Monish Pabrai says, this book has more value than a college degree. And it's amazing how, if we can start making better decisions, the quality of life will improve. We can notice our own patterns, our own bad habits. We can start to correct them, to take better decisions in our everyday life. Small decisions, big decisions. And instead of just spinning around in circles in one level, we can then start to see, okay, what would actually be the smarter thing? And suddenly we will rise. It's like Charlie Munger says in one part of the book, one friend he had, that he said he was not particularly intelligent, but he was just like a duck sitting on a pond, and while the level of the pond rose, he actually rose with the water. So we want to be that. We want to be that duck, you know. It's actually quite amazing that the book now is in print, because just a few years ago it was very difficult getting hand of the book, and it was because it was out of print, and I think you needed to pay $100-200 on eBay, but even that would have been worth it because it's so powerful. And if we can just make a few less stupid decisions and a few better, smarter decisions in our life, if we can do that in each area, if we can do a few less stupid decisions when it comes to relationships and a few smarter ones, we can hang out with a little bit higher quality people, for example. Spend a little less time or removing a few people that is dragging us down, for example. Or if we can avoid making stupid decisions with money, we take a little bit smarter decisions with money, with capital allocation, for example, or how we form our business, in which career we go into, and how we treat those relationships, you know. And if we can make fewer stupid decisions regarding our health, you know, if we can, and a few better ones, I think if we combine those things together, it will have a big impact in the long run. And help us have a high quality life. So try using these principles and see what happens for you. Maybe you get some super big insight, or a small one that will help you. So good luck, and see you in the next video.